Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the Titan's Reach, watching his crew extract precious metals from the asteroid field. The mining operation had been running smoothly for 3 weeks. His ship was one of dozens scattered across this system, all working to gather resources for the growing human colonies. The year was 2387, and humanity had spread across the stars. They built homes on distant worlds and turned empty space into thriving communities. Jake felt proud of what his people had accomplished in just 2 centuries of space travel. "Captain, we're getting an incoming transmission," said Lieutenant Commander Lisa Harper from her station. "It's coming from outside the system." Jake frowned. They weren't expecting any visitors. "Put it through." The main screen flickered to life, showing a tall, thin alien with gray skin and large black eyes. Behind him stood several other creatures from different species, all wearing elaborate robes marked with golden symbols. "I am Prime Minister Zektar of the Galactic Trade Council," the alien said in perfect English. His voice was cold and commanding. "You will listen carefully to what I have to say." Jake had heard of the council before. They controlled trade between most alien civilizations in this part of the galaxy. 12 different species worked together under their banner, and they had been around for thousands of years. "We're listening," Jake replied, keeping his voice steady. Zektar's eyes narrowed. "Humanity has been mining resources without proper authorization. You have been operating in council space without paying the required fees. This ends now." "Council space?" Lisa whispered to Jake. "We checked the star charts. These systems are unclaimed." Zektar continued as if he had heard her. "All human mining operations will cease immediately. You will surrender 90% of everything you have extracted to the Council as payment for our protection services. Furthermore, all future mining activities must be approved by us, and you will pay a tax of 90% on everything you collect." The bridge fell silent. Jake felt his crew's eyes on him as they waited for his response. 90% was almost everything they worked for. It would mean the end of human expansion and the collapse of their colonies. "That's quite a demand," Jake said carefully. "What happens if we refuse?" "Then you will face enforcement actions," Zektar replied with what might have been a smile. "We have dealt with many species who thought they could ignore council authority. They all learned to cooperate eventually." Commander Ryan Torres, the ship's head of security, stepped forward. Jake had served with Ryan for 8 years and trusted his judgment completely. Ryan had fought in the border conflicts with the Centauri, rebels, and knew how to read military threats. "Captain, this is extortion," Ryan said quietly. "Pure and simple." Chief Engineer Maya Johnson looked up from her console. She had been analyzing the transmission's technical data. "Sir, their ships are using technology that's at least 50 years behind ours. Their weapon systems look outdated too." Jake considered this information. The Council seemed to think they held all the cards, but maybe they didn't know as much about humanity as they believed. "You have 7 standard days to comply," Zektar announced. "After that, we will send our enforcement fleet to collect what is owed and remove any resistance." The transmission ended, leaving the bridge in tense silence. "Get me Admiral Sullivan on Earth," Jake ordered. "Priority channel." While Lisa worked to establish the connection, Jake thought about what they were facing. The Galactic Trade Council controlled hundreds of star systems and commanded fleets that numbered in the thousands. But something about Zektar's attitude bothered him. The alien had spoken like he was dealing with children who didn't know better. Connection established. "Captain," Lisa reported. Admiral Kate Sullivan appeared on the screen. She was in her 60s with gray hair and sharp blue eyes that had seen too many battles. Jake had served under her command early in his career and respected her greatly. "Admiral, we have a situation," Jake began, and quickly explained the Council's ultimatum. Sullivan listened without interrupting, her expression growing darker with each detail. When Jake finished, she was quiet for a long moment. "They want 90%, she said finally. "That's not taxation. That's slavery." "What are your orders, Admiral?" Jake asked. "Stand by for now. I need to brief the Colonial Defense Committee and get authorization from Earth." "But Jake," she paused. Start preparing your people. I have a feeling this won't end with negotiations. After the call ended, Jake gathered his senior staff in the briefing room. The mood was grim as they discussed their options. They've done this before, Ryan said, pulling up data on his tablet. I've been researching the Council's history. Over the past century, they've forced at least 20 different species into these same arrangements. Most of them gave up their independence rather than fight. What about the ones who didn't give up? Maya asked. Ryan's expression darkened. Their homeworlds are now Council mining colonies. The populations were relocated to labor camps. Lisa had been studying the star charts. If they're telling the truth about enforcement actions, we're looking at a massive fleet. Our intelligence reports suggest they can field over 1,000 ships. But Captain, Maya interrupted, I've been thinking about their technology. If it's really as old as it appears, their ships might not be able to handle our newer weapons systems. We've made huge advances in plasma technology and shield generators in the past few decades. Jake nodded slowly. Humanity had always been good at innovation. While other species seemed content with technologies that worked, humans constantly improved and adapted their tools. There's something else, Ryan added. I've been reading about their military tactics. The Council fights like most galactic civilizations. Big formations, predictable strategies, heavy reliance on superior numbers. They expect their enemies to follow the same rules. And we don't follow those rules, Jake said. Understanding. Exactly. Human military doctrine is built around flexibility and adaptation. We fight dirty when we have to. Maya laughed, but there was no humor in it. They think they're dealing with another peaceful species that will roll over when threatened. They have no idea what they're walking into. Jake looked around the table at his officers. These were good people who had families and dreams beyond this asteroid field. The Council's ultimatum would destroy everything humanity had built among the stars. But maybe Zektar had made a mistake. Maybe he had chosen the wrong species to threaten. Get me a channel to all human ships in the system, Jake ordered. It's time to let everyone know what we're facing. As Lisa worked to establish the communication link, Jake wondered if the Galactic Trade Council had any idea what they had just started. In 7 days, they would find out what happened when someone threatened humanity's future. The countdown had begun. Admiral Kate Sullivan stood in the war room deep beneath the Earth Defense Command Center. Around the massive holographic display, the most senior military leaders of humanity debated their response to the Council's ultimatum. 3 days had passed since Captain Morrison's report, and the deadline was approaching fast. The vote is unanimous, announced General Patricia Woods, head of the Colonial Defense Committee. We reject the Council's demands completely. Kate felt a mix of pride and concern. She had expected this decision, but it meant war with an enemy that vastly outnumbered them. Then we need to prepare for the worst. How long before their enforcement fleet arrives? Dr. Alan Pierce, humanity's leading expert on alien civilizations, stepped forward. He had spent 15 years studying the Council species and their methods. Based on their fleet positions, 4 days at most. But Admiral, I believe we have advantages they don't know about. Explain, Kate said. The Council has conquered 23 species in the past century. Every single one of those species developed from herd animals or pack hunters with strict social hierarchies. They understand submission and dominance. When faced with overwhelming force, they surrender to preserve their populations. Kate began to see where this was going. But humans are different, completely different. We evolved from persistence hunters. We're the species that chased mammoth across continents until they collapsed from exhaustion. We don't give up when things get hard. We get more determined. Meanwhile, 3 star systems away, General Hixron of the Ketari Empire prepared his enforcement fleet. The Qatari were one of the Council's most trusted military species, with a proud tradition of quick, decisive victories. Hixron had commanded similar operations dozens of times before. Intelligence report on the humans, he demanded from his aide. Young species, General. Only 2 centuries in space. Their technology appears primitive by Council standards. Population. Estimates suggest they have maybe 50 combat-capable ships in the target area. Hixron nodded with satisfaction. And we're bringing 300. This should be over in hours. His fleet was impressive by any measure. Massive dreadnoughts, bristled with weapons that had conquered worlds. Fighter squadrons filled the launch bays, ready to swarm any resistance. The Council's military might had never failed before, but General Hixeron had never faced an enemy like humanity. Back on Earth, Captain Monica Wells received new orders at the defense station orbiting Kepler 442b. Her station protected one of humanity's largest mining colonies, home to nearly 2 million people. If the Council broke through here, those families would face slavery or worse. All civilian ships are to be evacuated immediately, she announced to her crew. Anyone who wants to leave has 6 hours to get clear. Her communications officer, Lieutenant Paul Murphy, looked confused. Captain, shouldn't we be evacuating the military ships too? The Council fleet is massive. Monica smiled grimly. Lieutenant, you're thinking like the Council expects us to think. We're not evacuating our military ships. We're evacuating everything that can't fight. Paul stared at her. Can't fight? Captain, these are mining ships and cargo haulers. Not anymore, they're not. Across human space, similar conversations were taking place. Commander Derek Foster gathered the captains of the mining fleet in the Vega system. These were civilian ship commanders who had signed up to extract resources, not fight wars. I won't lie to you, Derek told them. The Council is coming with enough firepower to glass planets. Our military ships are outnumbered 10-1. If you want to run, no one will blame you. Captain Sarah Martinez of the mining ship Iron Mountain spoke up. Commander, my grandfather fought in the water wars on Mars. He used to tell me that humans don't run from bullies. We make them regret starting the fight. One by one, the other captains agreed. Miners, cargo haulers, and transport pilots all volunteered to stay and fight. Derek felt a surge of pride in his species. The Council had no idea what they were walking into. Chief Engineer Maya Johnson worked frantically aboard the Titan's Reach, modifying their mining equipment for combat. Plasma cutters designed to slice through asteroid rock could just as easily cut through ship hulls. Explosive charges meant for breaking up large rocks would work perfectly as improvised weapons. The beauty of this, she explained to her team, is that the Council has never seen industrial equipment used as weapons. Their tactical computers won't know how to defend against mining lasers and demolition charges. Dr. Nathan Clark, the fleet's chief medical officer, prepared for casualties but also studied the psychological profiles of Council species. What he found was encouraging. Most Council species have pain thresholds much lower than humans, he reported to the command staff. They're also not used to enemies who keep fighting when injured. In their experience, damaged opponents retreat or surrender. And humans? Captain Morrison asked. Humans get angry when they're hurt. We fight harder, not less hard. It's going to confuse them badly. 3 days before the deadline, the Council fleet entered human space. General Hixeron was pleased with what his sensors showed him. The humans had indeed gathered their ships, but the numbers matched his intelligence reports. 50 military vessels and maybe twice that many civilian ships fleeing the area. This will be simpler than expected, he told his staff. Deploy in standard formation. We'll demand their surrender first, then destroy any ships that refuse to comply. But his sensor operators were making a mistake. Those civilian ships weren't fleeing, they were moving into attack positions. The Council's computers couldn't identify them as threats because they had never encountered mining ships used as weapons of war. Colonel Amy Rodriguez commanded the ground forces on Vega Prime. Her troops were vastly outnumbered, but they had spent 3 days preparing the battlefield. Human military doctrine emphasized using terrain and mobility to offset superior numbers. Remember, she told her soldiers, the Council species fight in formation. They expect their enemies to do the same. We're going to hit them from every direction they're not watching. Amy had studied the Council's previous conquests. In every case, the defending species had tried to meet the Council's armies head-on in traditional battles. The Council was very good at traditional battles, but humans didn't fight traditional battles when they were outnumbered. On the final day before the deadline, Admiral Sullivan sent a message to all human ships and colonies. They want to take our freedom. They want to enslave our children and steal the fruits of our labor. They think we'll surrender because we're young and weak. They're about to learn that age doesn't matter when you're fighting for survival, and human beings are never weak when we're protecting our families. The message spread across human space like wildfire. From the mining stations around distant stars to the research colonies on the galactic rim, humanity prepared for war. General Hixron received his final intelligence update as his fleet approached the first human system. Sir, the humans have rejected the ultimatum. They appear to be preparing to fight. Hixron laughed. With 50 ships against 300? Their courage is admirable but pointless. Begin the attack. As the Council fleet moved into engagement range, Hixron felt confident this would be another quick victory to add to his record. The humans would realize their mistake soon enough. But deep in space, Captain Morrison watched the approaching enemy fleet and smiled coldly. The Council was about to discover that threatening humanity was the biggest mistake they had ever made. The war was about to begin and the galaxy would never be the same. The Battle of the Nexus system began at 800 hours ship time. General Hixron's massive fleet dropped out of hyperspace in perfect formation, exactly as their tactical manuals demanded. 300 warships arranged in precise lines, ready to deliver overwhelming firepower against the primitive human resistance. What they found waiting for them broke every rule of space combat they had ever learned. "General, I'm not reading any organized formations from the human ships," reported his sensor operator, a young Qatari named Vextal. "They appear to be scattered randomly throughout the asteroid field." Hixron frowned. In thousands of years of galactic warfare, no species had ever abandoned formation flying. It was suicide. Ships needed to coordinate their shields and weapons to be effective. "Are they trying to flee?" "No, sir. They're moving toward us, but not in any pattern our computers recognize." Commander Derek Foster crouched in the modified cargo bay of the mining ship Iron Mountain. Around him, a dozen other humans checked their improvised weapons one final time. Captain Sarah Martinez had volunteered her ship for the most dangerous part of the battle plan. "Remember," Derek said into his comm, "we're not trying to win a fair fight. We're trying to make them bleed for every inch of space." The Iron Mountain was now more weapon than mining ship. Her cargo holds were packed with explosive charges. Her hull was studded with improvised missile launchers, and her mining lasers had been overcharged to cutting levels that would slice through military armor. "Contact in 30 seconds, Sarah announced from the bridge. Derek grinned. The Council ships were huge and powerful, but they were also slow and predictable. The Iron Mountain was small, fast, and completely insane by galactic standards. "All ships," came Admiral Sullivan's voice over the comm. "You are free to engage. Show them what happens when they threaten our families." The human fleet erupted into motion like an angry swarm of wasps. General Hixron watched in disbelief as the human ships attacked from every direction at once. Some came straight at his formation like tiny missiles. Others swung wide around asteroids to attack from the flanks. A few actually dove beneath his fleet and came up from below. "This is chaos," muttered his tactical officer. "There's no coordination, no strategy. How are we supposed to respond to this?" That was exactly the problem. Council military doctrine was built around fighting other organized fleets. Their battle computers were designed to predict enemy movements based on logical tactical decisions. But the humans weren't being logical. The Iron Mountain screamed past the Council flagship at impossible speed, her mining lasers carving deep grooves in the dreadnought's hull. Before the Council gunners could track her, she was gone, weaving between asteroids like a metal bird. "Direct hit on the command section," Derek reported as explosions blossomed across the enemy ship. "Their shields didn't even slow us down." Captain Monica Wells watched the battle from her command station and felt a fierce pride in her species. The Council had brought overwhelming force, but they had never faced an enemy that refused to be overwhelmed. "All mining ships, this is command. Begin Operation Scrapyard." Across the battlefield, human mining vessels started using their industrial equipment in ways the manufacturers had never imagined. Plasma cutters designed to slice asteroids began carving through Council ship hulls like butter. Demolition charges, meant for breaking up space rocks, turned enemy vessels into clouds of debris. The Council's advanced shields were designed to stop energy weapons and missiles, They were completely useless against mining equipment that was never supposed to be a threat. "Sir, we're losing ships," reported HFY's communications officer. The fear in her voice was something the general had never heard before. "The humans are using some kind of weapon we can't defend against." HFY stared at his tactical display in growing horror. Red markers showed damaged and destroyed council ships scattered across the system. But the humans weren't using advanced weapons. They were using industrial tools like they were guns. "How is this possible?" he demanded. Nobody had an answer. On the surface of Vega Prime, Colonel Amy Rodriguez watched council dropships descend toward her positions. The enemy had at least 10,000 soldiers while she commanded barely 800. By every military calculation, this should be a massacre. But Amy had spent years studying human history, and she knew that humans had won impossible battles before. "Wait for my signal," she told her troops over the comm. "Let them think they know where we are." The council soldiers landed in perfect formation, just like their training manuals taught them. They advanced across the open ground in organized waves, expecting to face defensive positions and traditional fortifications. Instead, they walked into a nightmare. Amy's soldiers attacked from underground tunnels, from hidden positions in the trees, and from places the council troops never thought to look. When the aliens turned to face one threat, 3 more appeared behind them. "They're everywhere," screamed a council officer into his radio. "How can there be so many of them?" There weren't many humans, but they moved like ghosts. When the council forces shot at one position, the humans had already moved to another. It was like fighting shadows that could shoot back. Lieutenant Paul Murphy had never been in combat before the council arrived, but he was learning fast. His squad had just destroyed their 3rd council tank using nothing but mining explosives and clever positioning. "The trick," he explained to his nervous soldiers, "is that they expect us to fight fair. But there's nothing fair about slavery." Dr. Nathan Clark worked frantically in the field hospital, treating wounded soldiers from both sides. What he saw confirmed his psychological analysis of council species. The alien prisoners were in shock, not just from their injuries but from the way humans fought. "They keep coming," one wounded Qatari soldier mumbled over and over. "We hit them, but they keep coming." Nathan understood. Most galactic species would retreat when wounded or when facing superior odds. Humans got stubborn instead. Back in space, the battle had turned into something no council tactician had ever imagined. Their beautiful formations were scattered wreckage. Human ships darted between asteroids like sharks, striking without warning, and disappearing before return fire could find them. Commander Derek Foster's team had boarded a council cruiser using nothing but determination and explosives. Now they were fighting through the corridors, and the alien crew was learning why humans had conquered their own planet before they ever reached space. "These passages are too narrow for their energy weapons," Derek shouted as his team advanced. "But they're perfect for hand-to-hand combat." The council soldiers were trained to fight with advanced weapons at long range. They had never learned to fight with knives and pistols in cramped spaces. Humans had been doing that for thousands of years. General HFY stared at his tactical display and felt something he had never experienced before: fear. His mighty fleet was being torn apart by miners and cargo haulers. His ground forces were being defeated by soldiers who fought like wild animals. "Sir," his aide whispered, "perhaps we should request reinforcements." HFY nodded slowly. He had brought enough force to conquer 3 star systems, but it wasn't enough to defeat humanity. The humans fought like nothing in galactic history. The battle raged on. Word spread through the Council's communication networks. The enforcement action that was supposed to be a simple intimidation had become a desperate struggle for survival. For the first time in 1,000 years, the Galactic Trade Council was losing a war, and across human space other colonies watched the battle reports and began to prepare. If the Council wanted a fight, humanity would give them one they would never forget. The hunters had awakened, and they were angry. News of humanity's victory at the Nexus system spread across the galaxy faster than anyone expected. Within days, every civilized world had heard the impossible story. A young species had defeated the Council's enforcement fleet using mining. equipment and tactics that no one understood. Ambassador Helen Carter stood before the Neutral Worlds Assembly, representing Earth in the most important diplomatic session in human history. The Great Hall was filled with representatives from hundreds of species, all waiting to hear what she would say. "Honored delegates," Helen began, her voice carrying clearly through the vast chamber. "Humanity stands accused of being aggressive and dangerous. The Council claims we are a threat to galactic peace." Murmurs rippled through the assembly. Many species feared that humans might indeed be the savage warriors that Council propaganda painted them as. "But I ask you this," Helen continued. "Who started this conflict? Who demanded 90% of our resources? Who threatened to enslave our colonies if we refused?" In the viewing gallery, delegates from dozens of oppressed worlds leaned forward. These were species that had already surrendered to the Council's demands, and they knew exactly what humanity was facing. The Valthyr submitted to similar demands. 40 years ago, Helen said, reading from her notes. The Nexari surrendered 60 years ago. The Keltos accepted Council authority 80 years ago. All of them now work as slaves in their own star systems while the Council grows fat on their labor. The Valthyr delegate, a tall being with blue skin and silver eyes, stood up slowly. "The human speaks truth," he said in a voice thick with emotion. "My people mine our own worlds and receive 1/10 of what we extract. The rest goes to feed Council greed." One by one, other delegates began to stand. The Nexari representative, a small mammalian creature with golden fur, spoke next. "Our children work in Council factories. They have never seen their homeworld sky without the smoke of Council industry." Helen felt a surge of hope. This was exactly what she had planned for. The Council wants you to believe that resistance is hopeless. They want you to think that accepting slavery is the only way to survive. But humanity proves that small species can fight back and win. Meanwhile, in a secret meeting on the neutral world of Kepler Station, Captain Tony Walker was making an offer that would change the course of the war. Around the table sat military officers from 6 different species, all volunteers who had come in secret to hear what humanity proposed. "We're not asking you to declare war on the Council," Tony explained. "We know that would mean the destruction of your homeworlds. But we could use pilots, intelligence, and supplies." Commander Zala of the Nexari Resistance looked skeptical. "What makes you think we can trust humans? For all we know, you just want to replace the Council as our masters." Tony smiled. "Because we're offering you something the Council never has. Partnership, not domination. Fight with us, and when we win, you get your freedom back. No taxes, no tribute, no slavery." The meeting went on for hours as Tony explained human military tactics and showed combat footage from the Nexus system. By the end, all 6 species had agreed to provide covert support. Dr. Laura Evans worked behind the scenes to build a broader coalition. As humanity's chief diplomat for alien affairs, she had spent years building relationships with oppressed species throughout Council territory. Now, those relationships were paying off. "The key," she explained to her team, "is showing them that the Council can be beaten. Fear is the only thing that keeps their empire together." Her agents spread across Council space, carrying videos of the battle at Nexus system and testimonies from liberated human colonies. The footage showed Council ships being torn apart by converted mining vessels and Council soldiers fleeing from human ground forces. For species that had never seen the Council lose a battle, the videos were revolutionary. Prime Minister Zektar was furious. In his private chambers aboard the Council flagship, he raged at his advisors about the growing rebellion in Council space. 17 worlds have stopped paying tribute, he hissed. 23 systems have requested renegotiation of their agreements. And 41 species have filed formal complaints with the Neutral Worlds Assembly about our excessive taxation policies. Information Minister Kelvas tried to calm him. "We can handle the diplomatic problems with propaganda, but sir, we need to deal with the humans before this spreads further." "Then send more ships," Zektar shouted. "Send everything we have." But his military advisors were reluctant. General Hixron's defeat had shocked the Council's high command. They had lost nearly 100 ships to an enemy that wasn't supposed to be able to fight back. "Sir," said Admiral Kesvar of the Hegemony Fleet, Perhaps we should reconsider our approach. The humans fight unlike any enemy we've faced. Our tactics are designed for conventional warfare. Zektar's eyes glowed with rage. Are you suggesting we negotiate with these primitive savages? I'm suggesting that if we keep losing fleets, we might not have an empire left to defend. While the council argued among themselves, Admiral Marcus Stone was planning the most ambitious operation in human military history. His target was the council's primary weapons manufacturing facility at Omega Station, deep in enemy territory. The station produces 60% of all council military equipment, he explained to his staff. If we can destroy it, we cripple their ability to wage war. Chief Technology Officer Rachel Kim had studied the captured council ships from the Nexus battle. Admiral, their technology is actually quite advanced in some areas, but they've used the same designs for centuries without innovation. If we can capture some of their manufacturing equipment, Marcus nodded. We don't just destroy the station. We steal their technology and improve it. The mission required perfect timing and coordination. Human ships would have to travel through 6 council systems without being detected, strike the heavily defended station, and escape with stolen technology. It was exactly the kind of impossible mission that humans specialized in. Captain Derek Foster volunteered to lead the boarding teams. His experience fighting inside council ships at Nexus made him the perfect choice. Their internal defenses are designed to stop organized assault teams, he explained. But we're not going to assault them. We're going to sneak in and take them, apart from the inside. The operation launched 3 weeks after the Nexus victory. 12 human ships, all equipped with captured council stealth technology, began the long journey to Omega Station. As they traveled, reports came in from across the galaxy. The rebellion was spreading faster than anyone had expected. Entire sectors were refusing to pay council tribute. Military units from oppressed species were deserting to join the human cause. On the neutral world of Haven, thousands of refugees from council space gathered to hear speeches by human diplomats. Many of these beings had never seen a human before, but they had heard the stories of the species that refused to surrender. Freedom is not something that powerful people give you, Helen Carter told the crowd. It's something you take for yourself. Humanity is showing you that the council can be defeated, but you must choose to fight. The crowd erupted in cheers that could be heard for miles. Back on Earth, Admiral Sullivan received daily reports about the growing coalition. Species that had been enslaved for decades were finding the courage to resist. The council's empire was beginning to crack. How many allies do we have now? She asked her intelligence chief. Confirmed military support from 37 species, sir. Intelligence cooperation from at least 50 more. And according to our diplomatic corps, over 100 species have stopped cooperating with council demands. Sullivan smiled grimly. Then it's working. The council wanted to crush one small rebellion. Instead, they've triggered the largest revolution in galactic history. The war was far from over, but humanity had proven something important. The council could be beaten. And once that idea took hold, nothing would ever be the same. In star systems across the galaxy, oppressed peoples looked up at the stars and dared to hope for freedom. The humans had shown them it was possible. Now it was time to finish what the council had started. The war reached its climax at Zephyria Prime, the council's capital world. What had begun as their attempt to extort resources from a young species had become a fight for the survival of their empire. Fleet Admiral Victoria Hayes commanded the largest human armada ever assembled, now supported by ships from 37 different species. The coalition fleet was unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. Human vessels flew alongside Nixari fighters, Vilthur cruisers, and ships from dozens of other worlds that had found the courage to rebel. Each species brought their own strengths to the battle, but they all shared one thing. They had learned to fight like humans. All ships, this is Admiral Hayes, Victoria announced over the fleet-wide comm. Today we end the Council's reign of terror. Today we show the galaxy that freedom is worth fighting for. Supreme Chancellor Vorthak stood in the Council's war room, watching enemy fleets mass at the edge of his system. In 6 months, his mighty empire had crumbled. Dozens of worlds had declared independence. His military was deserting to join the human cause. Everything he had built was falling apart. "Sir, the humans are demanding our unconditional surrender," reported his aide. Vorthak's hands shook with rage. "Never. If we cannot rule the galaxy, then we will destroy it. Activate the planet killer weapons." His generals exchanged worried glances. The planet killers were weapons of last resort, designed to crack worlds apart from orbit. They had never been used before, but their mere existence had kept rebellious species in line for centuries. "Sir," said General Crixton, "if we use those weapons on human colonies, it will unite every species in the galaxy against us." "They're already united against us," Vorthak screamed. "The humans have turned half the galaxy into rebels. At least, this way, we send a message about the price of defying the Council." But Vorthak had made a crucial mistake. He assumed that threatening human civilians would make humanity back down. He had never studied human history, or he would have known that threatening human families only made them fight harder. Colonel So. Justin Martinez led the most dangerous mission of the war. His special operations team had infiltrated the Council's command structure using captured enemy uniforms and identification codes. Now they moved through the corridors of the Council's military headquarters like ghosts. "Remember," Justin whispered to his team, "we're not here to fight. We're here to turn their own defenses against them." The team had studied Council psychology for months. Like most galactic species, they relied heavily on automated systems and rigid hierarchies. If you could access their command codes, you could take control of their entire defense network. Justin's team reached the central command center without being detected. The Council guards were looking for external threats, not enemies who were already inside their most secure facility. "Beginning upload now," reported Sergeant Lisa Torres as she connected her equipment to the main computer. "We'll have control of their defense grid in 60 seconds. Meanwhile, Commander Ashley Brooks coordinated simultaneous strikes across 12 Council strongholds. The humans had learned to fight on multiple fronts at once, forcing their enemies to spread their defenses. Then, "All teams begin Operation Freedom," she announced. Across Council space, human special forces units attacked communication centers, weapons factories, and command posts. But they weren't trying to destroy these facilities. They were capturing them intact for the rebellion. Dr. Peter Chang watched the battle unfold from the human flagship. As the Coalition's chief strategist, he had designed the final assault to exploit everything they had learned about Council psychology. "The beautiful thing about rigid hierarchies," he explained to Admiral Hayes, "is that they collapse completely when you remove the top levels. The Council has ruled through fear and intimidation for so long that their lower-ranking officers don't know how to think for themselves." His prediction proved accurate. As human forces captured Council command centers, entire enemy fleets simply stopped fighting. Without orders from above, most Council officers chose to surrender rather than face the humans in combat. On Zephyria Prime's surface, the Council's elite guard made their final stand. These were the most loyal troops in the Empire, trained from birth to serve the ruling class. But even they had heard the stories of human ferocity in ground combat. Captain Monica Wells led the assault on the Council's palace. Her troops had fought their way across half the galaxy to reach this moment, and they were not about to be stopped by enemy guards who had never faced real combat. "For everyone who died in Council slave camps," she shouted as her soldiers advanced, "for every world they've stripped bare, for every species they've crushed, today we end this." The battle for the palace was fierce but brief. The Council guards were equipped with the finest weapons money could buy, but they had no answer for human tactics. Monica's troops came from every direction at once, using the palace's own architecture against its defenders. Supreme Chancellor Vorthak made his final desperate gambit from his private bunker deep beneath the palace. With shaking hands, he activated the planet-killer weapons targeting human colonies. "If I cannot rule," he whispered, "then let the galaxy burn." But his weapons never fired. Colonel Martinez's team had taken control of the defense network just in time. The planet killers turned slowly in their orbits and aimed at their own ships instead. "Sir," Justin reported over the comm, "we have control of all Council weapon systems. Their planet killers are now targeting their own fleet. The psychological effect was devastating. Council ships that had fought bravely suddenly found their own superweapons pointed at them. Faced with annihilation by their own side, most chose to surrender immediately. Admiral Hayes watched enemy ships dropping their shields and powering down weapons across the system. All ships ceased fire, except their surrender. But the war's end came not with a massive explosion or final battle. It came with the simple click of handcuffs as human soldiers arrested the council leadership. Vorthak was found in his bunker, staring at screens that showed his empire collapsing around him. When Colonel Martinez's team broke down his door, the Supreme Chancellor barely looked up. "You don't understand what you've done," Vorthak whispered. "Without the council, there will be chaos. Species will fight each other for resources. The galaxy will tear itself apart." Justin smiled grimly. "Maybe, but at least they'll be free to make their own mistakes." The formal surrender ceremony took place on Kepler Station, where the war had begun with secret meetings and desperate alliances. Now representatives from over 200 species gathered to witness the birth of something new. Ambassador Helen Carter read the terms of the Free Worlds Alliance Charter. No species shall claim dominion over another. No government shall demand tribute without representation. No world shall be stripped of its resources by foreign powers. And no being shall be enslaved for the profit of others. The crowd erupted in cheers that seemed to shake the station itself. Species that had been slaves for generations were finally free to determine their own futures. Dr. Laura Evans worked with newly liberated worlds to establish their own governments. The process was messy and complicated, but it was theirs to control. Former council colonies were learning to make decisions for themselves after centuries of being told what to do. "Democracy is hard," she explained to a group of Velther leaders, "but it's better than slavery." Fleet Admiral Victoria Hayes stood on the bridge of her flagship, watching the remnants of the council fleet depart for exile in the Outer Rim. They had been stripped of their weapons and forbidden from returning to civilized space, but they were allowed to live. "Some of my officers think we should have executed them all," she told her aide. "Why didn't we, Admiral?" Victoria smiled. "Because humans don't become monsters to defeat monsters. That's what separates us from the Council." The war's end brought celebrations across the galaxy, but it also brought challenges. Hundreds of worlds needed to rebuild their economies without Council exploitation. Former enemies had to learn to work together, and humanity found itself reluctantly cast as leaders of the new galactic order. "We never wanted to rule anyone," Admiral Sullivan explained to the Earth Assembly. "We just wanted to be left alone to build our own future. But the Council forced this war on us, and now we have responsibilities to the species that fought beside us." The Free Worlds Alliance grew slowly but steadily. Some species chose to remain independent, and that was respected. Others formed smaller coalitions based on common interests or geography. But all of them shared the basic principles that humanity had fought for: freedom, self-determination, and the right to keep what you earned. Years later, historians would look back on the Council War as the moment the galaxy changed forever. A single act of greed by an overconfident empire had triggered the greatest revolution in galactic history. The Council had wanted to enslave one small species and steal their resources. Instead, they had awakened something that changed everything: the idea that freedom was worth fighting for, and that even the mightiest empire could fall if enough people stood up and said no. Humanity had not set out to conquer the galaxy. They had simply refused to be conquered, and that refusal had shown every oppressed being in the galaxy that they too could choose to be free.